Harmy, it's sad news. It's desperately sad news, as I said, but we have to start with Graham Thorpe. We'll hear in a moment from Philip de Freitas, who was asked for his thoughts, memories, and reactions to Thorpe's passing. But I mean, it's difficult to gather your thoughts so soon after hearing the news, and I'm sure that you, like many of hundreds of other people, will be devastated.
Man, I didn't know where to go this morning when the news came on. I was like 8 o'clock, phone rang, startled a little bit, done, why are they ringing me? And then, 5 minutes later, we seen the headline that Graham had sadly passed, age 55. And I mean, 55, it's no age whatsoever. And I mean, as growing up, I mean, anybody around my age, 45, a little bit, possibly a little bit older. I mean, you throw yourself back to when you were 12, 13, 14. I mean, if you're a bowler, you want to be Darren Gough. If you're a batter, you want to be Graham Thorpe. Everybody wanted to cook him a bat, that ridgeback he used to use. I got one at Christmas. I mean, and then to go and have the fortune to play alongside him and see what, all the way through my sort of, because I wasn't a massive cricket person when I sort of I grew up. I've read this spoke about it many times, but there were one or two players that you love watching, and Graham was definitely one of them, like I mentioned. And you get a chance to play cricket full time professionally, you look across and you wait for that day you play against. I mean, during my time, it was the likes of Mark Ramprakash, Graham Hick, Graham Thorpe. If you got a chance to play against them, you very rarely got a chance to play against Alex Stewart, Nasser Hussain, Mike Latham, because they were all international, and Graham Thorpe was in that boat as well. So to then get a chance to play against him and then alongside him, I think I first played against him in '99, then played alongside him, being in the same dressing room as somebody you've seen, glued to the television watching. I mean, this morning, I don't think I stopped crying for about an hour, because I was close to Thorpe in that dressing room, that 2003-4 time. Gray had a real struggle at the back end of his career, both, personally and, with his body, his back and stuff like that. And, I was close to Thorpe, and so, when he took ill a few years ago, spent a lot of time on the phone to Mark Butcher, talking, asking how he was going on, and everything that was going with him. And I mean, it is so sad. And you see the outpouring of great players talk about how great Graham Thorpe is. I think that tells you what a career. The numbers stack up against everybody. The personality and the person was great to be around in a dressing room. To be fair, he didn't always conform. I'm sure coaches tearing their hair out sometimes just to try and get Thorpe not only on the bus on time, but to get him in the same kit and to get him looking like one of us as a teammate. That was always a challenge, but that was the fun of the fair with Gray. He was a brilliant character, brilliant man, unbelievable player. And I'm sure we'll get onto, memories of him playing, but my better memory today will always be, and I will tell everybody that I speak to today about Graham Thorpe, the player, being out in Barbados with him. I mean, best seat in the house when somebody gets a test match 100. But to get 100 the way he did, and I've said it many, many times, not just because of what's happened today, that's the best 100 I've ever witnessed firsthand. Even better than the Peterson one, because of the way he went about and did it. It was magnificent. So it is a sad day. I mean, desperately sad day. And it's going to be a hard one today, Manners.
Well, have a glass of red wine for him later on this evening. I know that he would have enjoyed that. All right, I think it's important to hear from the ultimate fan, our very own sports editor, Jon Norman, a lifelong Surrey devotee, I think it's fair to say, who would have seen Graham Thorpe from his earliest days in county cricket and certainly his entire 12-year international career. Devastating news, Jon. I don't know whether it's Graham Thorpe the cricketer, Graham Thorpe the character, Graham Thorpe the man that you want to remember? I mean, the news has devastated hundreds and hundreds of fans around the country, but for you in particular, our thoughts immediately went to you and all the years you spent at the Oval watching Graham Thorpe.
Yeah, I mean, look, Harmy would be able to talk about Graham Thorpe, the man. You know, I did meet him. I worked with him. I found him to be disarmingly honest. I remember back in 2008, and I was still quite new to the game of broadcast journalism, and I was a little bit in awe of him, you know, and he just put me at ease straight away. We had a conversation. We worked together. It was a blast, or whatever it was called back then. And he lived in Wimbledon, which isn't far from where I lived. And we were working at the Rose Bowl. And for some reason, talkSPORT didn't put us up in a hotel. They cabbed us back to London after the game, which is fine. And so me and Thorpe, because we were going to the same place, were in the back of the car for an hour and a half. You know, it's a good hour and a half, 2-hour journey. And Harmy will know what Thorpe was like. I must have spoken 10 minutes. And Thorpe spoke the entire journey back, and he told me about, he told me about match fixing stories and naming players, and he told me about the problems he was having domestically, or he'd had domestically during those real tough periods playing for England. He told me everything, and I just sat there and I was just like in awe and just thinking, wow, this is what a bloke. But as a player, he was just the banker, wasn't he, Harmy? He was the guy, you know, for all the flair of your Alex Stewarts and your, you know, the obduracy of your Nassers and your Athers, and the cut shot of your Smiths, and all those wonderful players, the elegance of Gower and Gatting and Gooch, all these amazing players that we look back on. Nobody can match Thorpe's average of 45, you know, and he did it against the best at the most difficult time of batting that maybe the game's ever had, certainly up there. Came up against the best Australian side ever, and arguably the greatest side ever. It came up against a West Indies side that was on the downward spiral, on the downward curve, but was still a great side. Came up against, you know, Wasim and Wakar at their absolute pomp. He had to play against the great Sri Lankan side in Sri Lanka. He had to play in Pakistan. And wherever he went, the toughest opposition brought out the very best of him. Look at his great innings. South Africa, you know, what a bowling lineup he had to come up against. You know, there has been, you could say there's been as good as, but not better than the Sean Pollock, Alan Donald, Mackay and Teeneys. And he scored runs against all of them. And the great thing with Thorpe, and the thing I think that was always forgotten about Graham Thorpe, was if he wasn't interested in easy runs, he wasn't interested in getting his average up to 40. If he walked out to the crease 200 for 2, I knew he would be walking back and it would be 240 for 3. I knew he wouldn't score any runs. But if he walked to the crease and it was 50 for 2, 50 for 3, and England were clinging on, and there was still an hour till lunch, and the ball was moving around, he was coming back at lunch. He wasn't getting out. He was your absolute back to the wall banker, and he was brilliant as well. And this is a guy that played 100 tests and averaged 45. Absolute legend of a player, and you know, I'm sure Harmy will say as well, you know, absolute legend of a bloke as well.
Yeah, he was, and it's been a tough morning. It really has. I just think of teammates, people that you know, I associate with my teammates. I grew up watching Thorpe as a hero. Mentioned that before, and you had the, you know, the bat that, because, you know, 15-year-old, you had a bat because Graham Thorpe was, you know, the man that used that bat. Where would he rank? I mean, you've mentioned where he ranks in England, ranking in Surrey, the legends that Surrey have had. He didn't just, you know, play for Surrey, England, coached England. He was a real, a real character of the game. where does he rank in the Surrey all-time greats? Because they've had an all-time, stellar players play for them. Thorpe has got to be right up there with one of the very best, if not.
Well, look, there's been what, three? If we say post-war, there's been 2.5, maybe pushing 3 legendary phases for Surrey. There was that great side in the 50s, which won 7 in a row, right? Then there was Thorpe's side. And Thorpe's side was a team blessed with individual talent, characters, and quality. And you could go from 1 to 11. And you could pick out internationals from Alex Stewart and Ian Ward opening through to Graham Thorpe and Mark Butcher, the Hollyoake brothers and Tudes and Ian Salisbury, and not just England international, Martin Bicknell, not just England internationals as well, Sir Clay Mushtaq, who was a great friend of Thorpe's. And then you've got the era now, because in terms of titles and trophies, it's pushing their underbats. If you were to put together your all-time Surrey 11, I mean, who comes in ahead of him, really? You'd have to go back to the 50s, because there is no player that gets in ahead of him since then. No player. Not as a number 4 or number 5 bat. Thorpe's in there. And I imagine, even if you added those great players from the 50s and some of the other amazing Surrey players from the 70s, Thorpe's name's still in there.
John, I'm not sure. You could see me just reaching over to my bookshelf. I'm not sure whether you ever read his book. It's a really, really honest, true account of real life. And I think his frailties. I covered a tournament with him. We were both on the commentary team. It was a one-day triangular, an obscure, meaningless competition tournament. And he joked when he introduced himself to me about having an agent and what an agent does for you. He said, "You know what? Retired cricketer with a lisp, and what does he do? He gets me a commentary job." But and he had those conversations with me as well, many evenings, well into the night, actually, over a glass of red wine. And it was the human side, and a reminder that life isn't perfect. And it was tough for him, wasn't it? I mean, he became one of England's assistant coaches, and I think was unfairly criticised for batting performances. That as Harmy always says, coaches don't coach England players. They create an atmosphere in which they thrive or can thrive and produce their best. But Graham Thorpe, the man, I mean, that tournament that I covered reminded me of, or your story about, spending an hour and a half in the back of a taxi with him. He was a lovely, lovely man. You said you were a bit daunted by him. I was intimidated by him when I first met him because of his hardness on the field. You sort of think that perhaps he's the tough guy off the field, but anything but.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the true measure of the man is, if you were to say what was his greatest innings, good luck. I mean, for all that 2003-04, Harmy's 7 for 12, and
innings in Barbados.
It doesn't happen.
Innings in Barbados
without Graham Thorpe, and England don't win in Pakistan, and England don't win in Sri Lanka, and this is the guy that made his debut against Australia and scores a century, and then scores another century against them when he goes to Australia. I mean, this is a guy that averaged over 40 against that Australian side. Class act. And we should also throw in there, and you possibly already have, he's a World Cup winning assistant coach as well. He enjoyed success with England. It may have ended poorly. Well, did it end poorly? That's not quite right. I think that the way it ended was poor. It was a poor way to end what had been a proud career. And actually, I think it was a poor way to end his playing career as well. I know his back was causing him more and more problems by the end, but surely he had one more hurrah. It was always a question of, is it going to be Thorpe or Bell? No, Thorpe or Peterson. That was a question. Thorpe or Peterson for that 2005 Ashes series. And I, with my Surrey bias, my Surrey hat on back in the day, I was thinking, well, yeah, Peterson should definitely play, but I think we should come down to Thorpe should play ahead of Bell. I mean, but he didn't. And, you know, I have wondered at times, you know, he scored a century in his 100th Test match, didn't he, against Bangladesh?
Yeah,
you know, and he played 100 tests and he had so much success and scored so many fine innings. And I always felt, you know, a little
I drove him to the airport home. Got 100 in his 100th Test at Chester Street, and I gave him a lift to the airport home. And the hardest part about everything was it was his 100th Test match, and he got a silver bat off the ECB. And he was like, how am I going to explain this to get through security? Because he obviously had his kit. So he's got this great big, silver bat. Silver bat. He's got all these things on, and he's had to walk through Newcastle Airport with the bat and to try and get it through security and to get it on the plane and hand luggage. Oh, let's stop! Can't stop. And he, give him a cuddle. See you later. And I expected him to be in and around the Ashes. He wasn't. Didn't see him for a little bit after that, but no, it was. And that was his last Test match. It was Thorpe or Bell. Peterson had to play, and England went with Bell, and Thorpe's career ended. But I'll never forget. He's got his two hands with his kit bags, and he's trying to balance this. This bat was beautiful. It was a solid silver bat with all these, who he played against, everything in a frame. Expecting him just to chuck it in the back of his car, and off he would go down the road back to the Oval. And he was chuntering in the back of the car. I think his dad was driving, and he's chuntering in the back of the car. He's like, how am I going to get this on the plane? So, man. But no, great times. And 55, I'm devastated. I really am. A great man. The Barbados innings you talk about, John, with the showing clips of him on Sky Sports, and that's the best for me. That's the best one I've ever been involved in. I've been in a lot of 100 partnerships, getting players over the line to 100. We were gone in Barbados. 40 on the Sam and 50 on me. And the last clip of this Sky Sports news reel is Graham Thorpe, great big smile, bat in there, helmet in the other hand, headband on, and I'm on my way to sort of congratulate him because it was an unbelievable 100. And that today will be the best memory I have of going up to Graham Thorpe when he did it. My hero growing up. I can't say any more.
Great to reminisce, John. Thank you very much indeed for your time. The only sadness is that Thorpe couldn't be here anymore and won't ever be anymore. Anyway, thank you indeed for your time, your thoughts, your memories. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll react to England's squad for the series against Sri Lanka as Essex's Jordan Cox receives his maiden Test call-up. Right, plenty to talk about with England's announcement of the squad for the 3 Test matches against Sri Lanka. Jordan Cox earns what many would say is a very, very well-deserved Test call-up. He's named in the 14-man squad. Ollie Stone returns to the Test side for the first time since 2021 after Dylan Pennington was ruled out. But the story that catches my eye, Harmy, is that Dan Lawrence is going to open the batting. There'll be plenty of specialist openers around the country and their advocates who will say that that's an unusual move. But it sort of reminds me of the beginning of Andrew Strauss's career, Sir Andrew Strauss, when, there was just a feeling amongst the England management and coaching team that we've just got to get this bloke in the team. We just have to fit him in the team. And that seems to be the case with Dan Lawrence. It's just like the guy's been the next cab off the rank. He might not be an opener, but we just want him in the team, and that's where the spot is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a bit of a free hit for Dan because obviously Zach's going to come back as soon as the finger heals. Dan's probably got 3 Test matches. He'd probably be saying, don't judge me on these 3 Test matches because I'm not a natural opener, but I'm going to go in there, chance to play for England. I'm going to give it a good old crack. And he has got a little bit of a free hit. So you could have gone down the Keaton Jennings road. We've been there. We could have gone back to Alex Lees. We've been there. This is possibly another sign of that first-class cricket. One doesn't really mean a great deal in this country when it comes to the selection or, the the rubber stamping of somebody's selection into the England team, to look at also there's no first class cricket being played. So, where do you get your sort of form going into a red ball game? Well, Dan Lawrence has been in India. He's been everywhere. He's been in most squads. He gets ferried off to go back and play for whichever franchise or whichever team he needs to play for once he's done his 12-man duties up until the game starts. So I agree. I don't think it's ideal that he has to open the baton, but I think from Dan's point of view, I'm sure he'd be going, give me a chance, let me go out there, because I think Ben Duckett done it before, but I think he was happier in the middle order playing for Notts, and then he went out and played and got off to a wonderful start in his sort of recoming of his Test career. So Dan Lawrence might see that as an example to go and grab the opportunity with two hands, get some runs against a team who aren't, I think, from a bowling point of view, as strong as an India or ever in Australia. So I think it's a good time to get Dan Lawrence into the team.
Do you think he was given a choice? Do you think that he might have considered saying, I've got everything to lose and not much to gain, given that that place isn't up for grabs long term? Do you think, I completely get what you're saying, is that it's a free hit in many ways. So, if you're an optimist, you'll say he's got everything to gain and nothing to lose. But, the pessimist might say, actually, it's the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. But, Manners, who wouldn't want to be in this dressing room full time at this moment in time? The dressing room's an unbelievable place. So going in there, the backing that you're getting, and it's not, I don't think it's like, we've spoke about, the great Graham Thorpe in the sort of late 90s, and you get sort of left out if you have a couple of bad games. This team doesn't do that. If that was the case, Zach Crawley might be playing for Kent's second team by now, the amount of chances he got early in his career. And now look at Zach, one of the most imposing batters in world cricket at the top of the order. So I think even if Dan Lawrence goes in there, has a couple of low scores, doesn't look as suited to opening the baton from a technical point of view, I still think he'd be the next cab off the rank when Zach comes back for the winter tour to Pakistan and to New Zealand. So I think the environment is a lot different. I think this environment backs their players, and this environment will make sure that even if Dan Lawrence doesn't have a great start at opening the baton, he will still be the next cab off the rank in the middle order when it comes. And, we talk about Jordan Cox. I think he'd have been in the conversation for the wicketkeeper's job as well. So if it wasn't for that sort of finger injury he had. So I think he's been on England's radar for quite some time now. He moved to Essex, which proved it to be a good move, first division cricket at the top end. So I'm excited to see if he gets a chance over the course of the 3 Test matches if another injury comes. But and also very happy to see Ollie Stone back in, because he's had a wretched time with injuries, but when he's on, Ollie Stone's got pace, and we've seen what pace does to teams, and this is what this England group wants to. This is the way they want to go down. They want to make sure that pace is at the forefront of their attack. So I'm pleased to see Ollie Stone back, and good on him for keep persevering, keep battling against injuries, and he has been rewarded.
You know what his return also says to me, Harmy, is that credit in the bank counts for a lot with this management, with this England setup. It's like, okay, you get a long-term injury, you come back, you're not starting from scratch. We've invested in you, you've put in the hours, you put in the hard work, and that credit stays in the bank. And Ollie Stone has had a good season, not outstanding. He hasn't kicked the recall door down with his performances, but they know what he's about. And as you say, he's got pace and he's got a track record. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm sure the same will be said for Josh Tongue when Josh Tongue eventually gets fit and firing and back up to speed. So it's a good point, but it's something that I'm sure the selectors have identified, that, this is the kind of bowler we want. This is why we want first-class cricket to play on flat pitches, cook up a ball, and et cetera, et cetera. because we need to produce players like Josh Tongue, Ollie Stone, etc. Billing Pennington, it's unlucky, but he'll get his chance. So his credit will be in the bank when he comes to get back fit. So, but I think Ollie Stone, there was a lot of investment in him early in his career. And yeah, I think you're right. I think because of that, I think once he's put a few performances in, I don't think it was about the performance of Ollie Stone, it was the fitness levels. And if the fitness levels are there, then he'd be back in contention because he has bowled really well, but he's bowled with good pace. And I think that's what England have seen.
You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll discuss the runners and riders to replace Matthew Mott as England's new white ball head coach. Right, the big vacancy in English cricket, England white ball head coach Matthew Mott, of course, stepped down last Tuesday after 2 years in the job. Is Jos Buttler fortunate? I mean, I suppose his position as captain has been questioned, Harmy, but I think it was a kind of routine questioning. I mean, there was never really serious speculation, not that I saw anyway, that he would be replaced. Marcus Trescothick takes over the head coach position in the interim. The Jos Buttler question you've dealt with a lot over the last couple of weeks. And your reasons for you would have also stuck with him. But is Trescothick a candidate to take over full time? And who would your man be?
Yeah, I think he possibly is in the conversation. Is Trez? If I was Brendan McCullum, I wouldn't let that happen. I think he's too valuable to the Red Bull team. But you have to see if he's good enough to be a head coach himself. I know for a fact he is because he's a great man, Trez, and I think he's brilliant with the team. And we've seen him manage. We've gone close quarters, walking over the field in India and seeing how he works, and being in New Zealand and seeing how he deals with the players. And even at the end of that Test match, just recently, Ollie Pope talking about coming into the series of preparation, working with Marcus along with Ben Duckett, saying the same thing, giving him the growing report. I think if I was Brendan McCullum, I'd be going, I'm not losing him. I'm not losing him. And anybody thinks Brendan McCullum is going to coach that white ball team wants to give their head a shake. I mean, he's got the best work-life balance you'd ever get. Why on earth would you want to? I mean, and Baz is not short of a few quid. I can't imagine. I know he likes his racehorses, but I think he's got the best job in the world. He's going well at it. Why would you even bring him into the conversation? I'd possibly think the only way I would do that from McCullum's point of view, if I could get him to oversee English cricket, I don't think Stokes would let him do that either, would be you appoint two assistant coaching teams, one for the white ball team, one for the red ball team, which he's got in Collingwood, Trescothick and Jeetan Patel. Put a white ball team together of Flintoff, one or two, etc. And he basically oversees with the captains, game plans, etc., and creates the environment. That's as much as I would get McCullum to do, because I think he's done a brilliant job with the Red Bull team, and I can't imagine him wanting to do that. So that's that. I understand what Mike Atherton wrote. I thought he wrote an excellent article about Andy Flower, and I think Andy Flower is, for me, the best candidate out there. He's a multiple white ball winner. But I just don't see that happening. I really don't. I think it's the perfect person, but the wrong fit. And I mean that with all due respect to Andy, because I think the world of him. I ended my career playing for England under Andy. Good man, honest man. See what he does with the white ball stuff. I think his knowledge about the game, the way he thinks about it, and he's also coaching ability is fantastic. So it was just probably the wrong fit for ECB at this moment in time with the way it's managed. Flintoff is the obvious candidate, and he will, I've got no doubt, be England's white ball coach come the winter. I've not spoke to Andrew recently, and I mean, I wished him all the best for the Northern Superchargers first game, which was an absolute schmozzle. And then there was a lot of articles written about, and strangely enough, they have not come back, have they? Them articles haven't come back. There's one or two journalists run for the hills now. The Superchargers are 3 wins from 4 games. So Andrew Flintoff must be a good coach now, because nobody's slagging him off after the first game. So all joking aside, it has to be Flintoff's. I can't see Katic, Hussey coming in. I can see Keezy going with Andrew Flintoff. I think the Butler question, I think Butler's, for me, you stick with Butler till at least till the end of the summer with Trez, because they have got a great working relationship. They get through to the Australian series. And then Rob Key's got a decision to make, because I think, like he did with McCullum and Stokes, it's a rebuild job. I really think this white ball team is a rebuild job. There's quite a lot of the modern day white ball greats leaving the England team. The likes of Moeen Ali, probably Chris Wokes, Mark Wood. Does he play white ball cricket anymore? You know, where's Adil Rashid going? You know, Johnny Besto will still be around. There's quite a few question marks. So I think the captain and the coach have to be in tune. They have to set an environment, and they'll be probably given 3 or 4 younger players to think they're the next ones building to the next World Cup. So I can only see Andrew Flintoff being England's white ball coach. I think it will be the right appointment, because of now you create environments. You don't coach players, you create environments, and I think Andrew will build the right environment. Anybody else, I really can't see. I'd love to see Jonathan Trott get a mention, but again, a little bit like Andy Flower, I think I'd be interested to see where Trotty's next move is. But I'd be surprised if it is with England's white ball team. But I hope he does get a chance to sit down with Rob Key and put his hat in the ring, because I think what Jonathan Trott's done has been a minor miracle with with everything that goes with Afghanistan off the field, the talent they've got on the field, to mould that group into a winning formula. I mean, he has to be seriously considered, but I would imagine that the sort of the candidate, which is head and shoulders above everybody else, will be Andrew Flintoff.
I'm sure that time heals relationships. Andy Flower's relationship with the ECB was a little fractious, I think it's fair to say, at the end of his tenure. He's subsequently, as you said, gone on to coach in 5 or 6, I think he may have dropped one now, at least 5 franchises, T20 competitions around the world. If the ECB were to compensate him, if they were to persuade him to resign from all of those jobs, which he's very good at,
very good,
and they were to compensate him, you might be looking sort of towards $1 million a year. And a lot of people would say, well, I mean, is any coach worth $1 million a year? That's not the question. The question is, do you expect him to take a pay cut to become England's white ball coach? So that'll be an interesting one. Jonathan Trott really has surpassed most people's expectations as a coach, hasn't he?
He has,
I mean, and it may well be a good time. Do you think has he got enough miles in the legs as a coach? Is that even important?
I don't think
as you said,
important.
I mean, Flintoff would create the environment.
Yeah, I don't think that's important, to be honest, Manners. Miles in the leg, I think he's done enough to warrant to be in the conversation as Jonathan. Flintoff, he's been an assistant coach and he's coached 4 games as a head coach. So that argument goes straight out the window if you say that Jonathan Trott hasn't got miles in the legs. I think the Andy Flower one, you're right. I think I'd be intrigued if they had the conversation with Andy where it went, because as much as he has got 5 teams, and yes, he might have to take a pay cut, I think if there was the right option, I'm sure Andy would really consider being coach of England, because it's a massive job, huge pool, talent pool, ridiculous. They've been white ball champions in 2 formats over the course of the last 5 years. I think Andy would. I actually think that would float, and that has to float somebody's boat like Andy Flower, because of he's been there before. But like you say, irrespective of it, it ended badly last time, or it ended negatively last time with with what happened with Peterson and 1 or 2 others. It's a new show. It's a new game. It's a whole new environment. So I can't see that being an issue for Andy Flower. But I can only see Andrew Flintoff being the head coach. I can't see really the way Rob Key worked to get Brendan McCullum in. I think Andrew Flintoff is like that fit the sort of, the charismatic, create the environment. It's about enjoying yourself. That makes you play better. And also, Fred's got a great cricket knowledge and a great cricket brain, as we're seeing now with the Superchargers. I can only see that working. So, as much as the Jonathan Trott one, I think that he took the job in South Africa. And I think that tells you that he probably doesn't think he's in the conversation. Was it the Pretoria job in South Africa? That probably tells you that he probably doesn't think he's in the conversation. So, no, I'd love Trotty to have some skin in the game, but maybe he's not this time. Definitely, or probably definitely next time a big job at the ECB comes around, because, like I said before, he's worked minor miracles with he's got talent at Afghanistan. Everything else they have to go through off the field. He's done brilliantly, so he should be in the conversation. But the intriguing bit is, will the captain carry on with the new coach? I think the captain is carrying on with the interim coach because of who the interim coach is, and try and get through to the end of the summer. I think the end of the summer comes, the West Indies series goes, and England are possibly on a rebuild. Is the rebuild with the captain? A little bit like what you say with Andy Flower manners. He's got 5 jobs on the go. The England white ball captain has got 3 or 4 franchises on the go, and fitting England in might be a little bit of a challenge in the next few years. So is it the right time for Jos Buttler just to step away and play franchise cricket and play big games, big tournaments for England? That might be going through his mind, and does he want to do that? So I think all options are on the table once October the 1st comes, and Rob Key has to make a decision.
Okay, final word to the one and only Darren Gough, and unsurprisingly, not for the first time, I think you'll find that you and he are aligned in their view.
He's a tremendous personality. He commands respect all around the world. His cricketing CV says it all. And like I said, the players are all there. The players are terrific players. They've been coached. They're playing in tournaments non-stop. It's not like 10, 15 years ago when you used to get 6 months off to work on your game. It's hard to work on your game. When you lose form, it takes a lot of balls to hit, a lot of balls. An England coach hasn't got time there to go and throw 1,000 balls a day at one of his players. He has to have his own personal coaches, goes back to his counties. There's other coaches, people use their own coaches now who are not attached to counties as well. So it's all about all rush now, short tournaments in a short period of time. And Andrew Flintoff, I would have no problem with it at all.
That's Darren Gough throwing his weight behind Andrew Flintoff as the new coach. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. Next up, we'll turn our attention to the week's other big stories and ask if English cricket is set finally for IPL investment. You're listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with Double Ashes winner Steve Harmison. And a reminder that the latest episode of Bumble and Kimber is out now. And on this week's show, they debate if Joe Root will surpass Sachin Tendulkar's record, the most test runs.
And should in that time have enough test matches, England play test matches, and he keeps his form. And it's funny that you mentioned he's got all those runs, and I was going to say seamlessly. I was at the test match on Saturday, and I'd seen him come in, and I thought, he's looking all right. I looked at the board, 42. Yeah. How has he got them? So I think he'll get right up there.
I think there's so many things that can go wrong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? So he says he's 33, 34. Like, cricketers used to be, shipped off to the glue factory at 32 in the old days. It is different, but once you get over 33, 34 and your family life comes in, and maybe you get an offer from the media, maybe you has a chance of working for an IPL franchise, all these different things will start to come in, and he'll start, his knees and his ankles might be a little bit sore, his back will get stiff, all those sorts of things start to happen. I think the seamless thing is the most interesting thing with Root, because I was talking to Chris Rogers recently, former Test player, and he said that he coaches his players on clips of Joe Root. He said, have a look at this, watch 20 minutes of this guy bat. He's on 20 not out already. He hasn't played a big shot yet. So we know he's going to be making runs consistently all the way through. how much does he want to keep putting his body and, you know, the amount of hours that he has to do and everything else? I think that's the tricky thing. I mean, England played like 1 million test matches.
They do.
Right?
That's an advantage to him.
And disadvantage. Because you look up at, I think if when it comes to the amount of tests they play, he can beat Tendulkar.
Well, Joe Root has just returned to the #1 spot in the world rankings, #1 batter in the world. What do you think, Harmy? He's got just over 12,000 test runs now, 12,027. Sachin 15,921. So he needs a shade under 4,000 test runs. If you as a purely mathematical exercise, number of test matches England play each year, Joe's age, the form that his average, then he should break that record if he's still playing by the age of 37, 38. But it's not just a mathematical question, is it?
No, it's not a mathematical question. I think Joe now is a red ball player. I think he can surpass him. I'd expect Joe Root to surpass Sachin's record. I think it might take him a bit longer than 37, possibly 38. I can see Joe playing beyond that. I really can. I think he's good enough. He enjoys the game. He loves the game. Plays as much as he possibly can. The hard thing for Joe now is if he used to come against Sri Lanka and the West Indies and New Zealand more often than not, then I think he passes it comfortably. But I think we're going to see England play more and more against as part of the big three. So his test career is going to be largely down now against Australia and India, and their bowling attacks. And when he does go past it, I think that needs to be taken into account as well of who he's played against for the majority of his career. So, I think he will surpass it. I hope he does. I really do. He's in great form. I mean, he is in great form. I bumped into him about a month ago on the field at Durham, and he's in great form as well. That cheeky chappy smile is still there. Everybody thinks that he's quiet, unassuming character. It's far from that. He's so important in the dressing room. I mean, he was in respect of what the record looks like, he was a brilliant leader for that team. Because I thought he took a lot of blows for that team when he was captain. And he's rewarding England now just by the volume of runs and the lieutenant he is towards Ben Stokes. I mean, if you think about him being captain for all that time and the way he is now towards the new captain, even though they're best mates. I mean, hats off. Many other characters would have disappeared, gone into the franchise world and never been seen again after 5.5 years as captain of England. Joe Root wants to be a better player every year. And while, this generation have been so lucky. They really have. Broad, Anderson, Root, Cook just before that. Just watch them players raise the bar the way they have done, time after time after time. As more and more franchise tournaments turn up and the newfangled way of playing of, trying to bray the ball hit the ball as far as you possibly can. The way Root plays Test cricket is amazing. And this series has been excellent. I can only see him having a very, very good back end of the summer. And he's going to be so important going, next summer and going out to Australia. So yes, I can see him surpassing Sachin's 15,500 test runs.
Me too. Right, let's move on to other stories that may have caught your eye. Sam Curran took a hat-trick and hit a half-century for the Oval Invincibles in their win over the London Spirit in the 100 on Sunday. But that isn't the story that caught my eye about the 100, Harmy. I always had this sort of image of the 100 PR people putting the word out that there should be no more stories to discredit the tournament after an inglorious start. Let's be honest. It got off to a very shaky start this year. Only positive things. Lots of emphasis on the new generation of cricket followers. No silly stories. And then I read a story that the bowlers in the competition believe that the 100 logo on the ball is contributing towards its swinging more, and the low scores in this year's competition. I thought this has to be a laugh. I mean, so like there cannot be a serious story, but it was.
It was, yeah. I read that, and I mean, I thought they winded me up. Like that horrible 10 dot balls at the start of the game against, I think, the Welsh Fire. And he hit this thing on a bit of string. But it's like, as much as batters can hit the ball out of the park, the bowlers can bowl well, you know. And that's my takeaway from that article. It's like, it doesn't matter if the ball's got lacquer on it or it's going to swing. I mean, the concept of the game is, you know, a contest between bat and ball. I did speak to, I'm not going to name names, I did speak to a very high-profile player recently who said there's an extra lacquer on the ball. And it's the extra lacquer on the ball is because of the 100 logo that's on the ball. And that's what's making it go that little bit more. But I'm sorry. If you're whinging about the ball moving, you're playing in England. I mean, it moves in England. Look, you give any cricketer a chance to make an excuse and not make an excuse, but to say it's doing too much when in a game of cricket, the way the hundreds played, I'm sorry. The actual, you talk about the Sam Curran one, it was interesting. Sam Billings walked off, didn't he? He gave himself out because he retired himself because he couldn't get the thing off the square. And then Sam Curran goes out and whacks 3 or 4 sixes. So the tactical substitution is not a bad thing in that concept. I think there's been some half decent games in this 100 so far. I think there's been some very average games in this 100 so far. I don't think it's been as high quality as what it was last year. And again, I keep having a go at it. I think the product was always something I enjoyed. The rest of it, I didn't like. And we're going to come on to the sort of sale of it. But if somebody's, you know, if it's an audition to try and sell it, I think it's nosediving at the minute.
I'm so glad you made sense of it now. Now I understand it. Okay, so the 100 logo on the ball is a prominent logo, and talking of PR people, they want it to last for as long as possible. So they said, right, put an extra coat of lacquer on it. Now I understand. It makes sense. It's not the logo that's making the ball swing. It's the preservation of the logo that's making the ball.
Absolutely. And when you're watching someone like Dan Worrell present the scene the way he has done, and there's cameras going all the way downside, and he sees the 100 sign. I'm sorry. I mean, you're allowed to bowl well. In a game of cricket, you're allowed to bowl well. They bowl well in the IPL, they bowl well in the SA20, they'll bowl well in the Blast, they'll bowl well in the 100. I mean, stop looking for excuses. You know, if you can't hit it, try and sort of build your innings a different way. But to blame an extra lacquer on a ball, I'm sorry.
Okay. Other news: Johnny Bairstow and Zach Crawley have become the latest England Test players to sign up for the SA20. Graham Smith's very clever as the boss, the big boss of the SA20. He's put his emphasis and got his team to put their emphasis on quality of life for the players. Yeah. Right, they're all gonna earn well, but there's the IL T20 and the back end of the Big Bash in Australia as competition for the SA20. But Graham Smith, as a former player, has said, right, if we just make this a quality lifestyle experience, great cricket as well, we'll pay everybody well, but I want people to want to come to South Africa in that January, February period. Bring your wives, bring your families. We'll make it a great time. And it's working.
Yeah, it's working. I think Graham Smith's done a brilliant job. I really have. I mean, the 100 could, you know, they could, if they want to get that better, they could, you know, do well of going and getting Graham Smith and see if you can entice him into running that competition as well. Because I think he's done a brilliant job at SA20. Not throwing stupid money about, as in willy-nilly, to make sure that we've got overseas players. I mean, we're getting, you know, proper players coming in, proper Test players coming in, and proper, you know, a proper tournament. And, you know, fair play to him. He's done a wonderful job, and that SA20 is now looking as though it's possibly going to be second best tournament behind the IPL once, and it's only in its sort of second or third year. So, you know, hats off to Graham. He's done a wonderful job. You're going to get Stokes in there. You're going to get Root in there. Butler's already in there from an English point of view. Now you see him best. And how good was it to see Johnny with a smile on his face the other day? Got 50 for the Welsh Fire. Interviewed after. He looked on good form. I was really pleased, really pleased for Johnny to see him playing cricket with a smile on his face again. And hopefully he's enjoying, you know, getting back into the runs, into the limelight, showcasing himself again. But I think that SA20 this year, with the players that are named so far, I think that's probably going to be the best tournament franchise-wise outside the IPL. And fair play to Graham Smith and his team for making that.
Commissioner is the word. He's the commissioner of the tournament. Now then, Hampshire are reportedly in advanced talks with the Delhi Capitals co-owners, the GMR Group, over £120 million deal for a controlling stake. Basically, Hampshire County Cricket Club, 150 years of history and all that, selling itself for 120 million quid. That's the cost of a couple of Premiership footballers. I mean, I don't know. Look, maybe it's great business. It makes sense a shiver down my spine. I don't know what it might mean. I mean, Hampshire County Cricket Club up for sale. Like, yeah, I know they're not a member-controlled county.
No, it's not. There's three of them, isn't it? There's three non-member. I think there's three non-member controlled counties. I know mine's one, Durham's one, and I know there was a story in the Times last week, the PIF coming in if Durham become 100 team. Northampton, I think, is the other one. I think it's Northampton, and I know Colin Graves is trying. I think he needs 75% of the vote, but trying to get Yorkshire into the sort of public domain, so privately owned, so they can then sell their club to a private investment to then. I think it seems as though, it just looks as though this now looks the best way for the franchise owners to get the whole shooting match when it comes to the 100. So if they buy the club, they get the sort of 50-odd%, the 51%, and then they've got an option to buy the 49% of the 100 team. So it just seems this is the easiest way to get in if you're a franchise owner, to get into a club and you own the club, and then you can then have full ownership of the 100 competition that your team plays in. So is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's always one of them. When it's the first one, you're selling your soul 150 years. I don't like that. And I don't, but I also see the other side of it and go, well, let's see where this goes, because it's new, it's different, it's something that we've not seen before. And sometimes you do have to look outside the box. But I'm with you. I'm more of a traditionalist. I'd like my team to be my team rather than being owned by somebody else. But football's that way. You can be as tribal as you want. Newcastle United had 14 years under Mike Ashley. Nobody had any choice of that. Nobody's got any choice of being owned by the Saudi Arabian, PIF. It's your club. You might not like it, but unfortunately, you're just going to have to get on with it.
Okay, finally, on to the final word. Now, Scotty Taylor has suggested that that should go to Matt Lamb, the Derbyshire batter, who was caught at mid-on after snapping his bat in half in the one-day cup defeat to Worcestershire. We can go with Matt Lamb, Harmy, or I've got another one, but go on.
Yeah, no, you go. I'm happy with that. If you get, if your equipment's not good enough and you get caught, you're out. See ya.
You're out. Absolutely. So I got a question for you. South Africa are about to play the West Indies in 2 test matches in the Caribbean. They've got one warm-up game. That in itself is a rarity. And it's a 4-day game as well. And it was played at full intensity from what I could see on YouTube. And for 4 days, these two teams slogged their way out on a very, very flat pitch at the Brian Lara Academy just outside in Trinidad. And Harmy, my question to you is that it was first class in everything other than the fact that there were the 14 players used. Only 11 batted and 11 bowled and fielded. But the West Indies invitation 11 made 397 on a very, very, very flat pitch. 397 all out. South Africa replied with 408 for 9 declared. But it was actually 408 for 4 because 5 batsmen retired out, having got between 50 and 80. So my question is, how would you have felt? How did you feel? You'd have been in that situation, or maybe you weren't actually. The game's changing that much so quickly. But a 4-day practice match, and you like the bowlers on both sides bowled 25 overs. The spinners, the fast bowlers bowled 20 overs. Could there be an argument to say, okay, it's not a first class match because 14 players are being used, but your performances will count towards your first class record?
I don't think too many people would retire out then. I remember a few years ago I went on we played a universities game, and I think I had 4 or 5 wickets in the first session, and I went on the middle session with my trainers on. So like Pinky's gone, you're not bowling them? No. I'm like, I'm not having my career best against universities. I didn't. And I apologise to all the university students that played in the minor counties in the university's first class system. I didn't want to have that on my record how many times you see players make their debut for their clubs at the start of the season against the universities, get a double 100, and then spend 15 years with their career best against Oxford or Cambridge and I've played with plenty of players, and some players who have been close to England, who now talk about the game and give their opinions of the game. And a lot of bowlers would go, he wasn't a bad player, but he was brilliant against universities. Couldn't score a run against good bowlers, but he was very good against universities. So I'm not so sure where I stand. I like all games like that be first class on your record. I'm a believer that if you get to 80, you learn how to get to 100. You learn how to get back time with, when your body's tired and everything that goes with it. So I'm not a big fan of the retired out bit, because what happens in a test match, if you get to 80 and you've not gone beyond that before and you nick one off and you're in the realms of unknown. So bowlers need to learn how to take 5 wickets. Batters need to learn how to get over the line when 3 figures is on an option. Walk off between 50 and 80. I'm not sure I'd have been a big fan of that.
Well, there were a couple of counties many years ago. I don't know whether they still do it now. They used to invoke the 6-ball rule. Once you got to 100, you only got 6 more balls, and the idea was see who could get closest to 136.
Yes. Yeah, I fully believe that, but there was no way I was getting my career. I didn't want to get my career best against. Might have been Cambridge, Oxford, whatever. Durham, might even mean Durham University, but no. Once I got to 4 or 5, that was enough for me, and I happily give it to somebody else. There you go.
You've been listening to Following On here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Neil Manthorp, along with former England fast bowler Steve Harmison. And if you've missed any of the show and you want to catch up, you can download the podcast from the Following On feed, available via the free talkSPORT app or wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back at a similar time next week to look ahead to the start of England's Test series against Sri Lanka. But for now, this has been another edition of Following On.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.